All right, good afternoon, everybody, and we will get started. We've got a few people still adding on to the webinar, but we'll get started. A couple of housekeeping items. We are recording today's session, so we will make the recording available after the session. We also will share the materials that we are going through so that you can refer back to them as needed. Also, if you have any questions while I'm going through the presentation, if you can enter them in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner, we will work to answer all of the questions at the end of the session. Today, my name is Sharon Cowley, and I'm with the College Board, and so I will be taking you through the materials. We are also joined by Melanie Jones from the State Department of Education. And so both of us will work to answer any questions or follow-up items that we might need to afterwards. So let's get started. So our agenda for today is to go through the bulk registration tool, what it is, what your deadlines are, how you will prepare the file, and then more specifically using the tool itself, how to create the file, upload it, and then what happens if you have to make fixes to it. At the very end, we'll give you some resources, and as I mentioned, we will answer questions. So let's start with what the bulk registration tool does. So this tool is available and allows districts or schools that participate in the Idaho SAT School Day to pre-identify students electronically and securely for the SAT School Day administration. What this is going to do is allow for a better reporting of students back not only to the state but also to you. One of the things that the registration file will do when you pre-identify those students to us, it will allow us to create the test material order that will be sent to you. So you will not need to order materials separately. And then the pre-ID labels that you receive will be affixed to the student's answer sheet. So let's talk about the timing for when you're going to complete this activity. The districts and schools will submit your bulk registration file no later than February 2nd. It's imperative that your file is received by that date. Otherwise, we have no way to generate your testing material order. So you want to make sure that you begin that process and get the file submitted no later than Friday, February 2nd. Also, want you to be aware that when you go into the system on the website to submit your bulk registration file, you may see dates that are different than the February 2nd date. And so please pay attention to this date. We do have kind of ongoing phases of registration for different activities. And so the February 2nd one is specific to the Idaho provided SAT. For uploading the file itself, a school-level staff member for one school, or for those districts that have multiple schools, a district-level designee will upload the file. It's important to know that the state, SDE, will not be uploading on behalf of schools or districts. So in the fall, when schools completed the intake form, a bulk registration coordinator was identified in that file. That person, and in some cases, some of you may have received outreach from College Board to just confirm the point person for that bulk registration file. And so that person is going to receive an email later today that includes the information for them to access the bulk registration tool. So that may be a school-level person, that may be a district-level designee. So let's talk about the file itself. So when you're preparing the file, as I said, folks that are going to have been identified to be the bulk registration coordinator will get the email with their access code information. They're going to log into the bulkreg.collegeboard.org website, and they're going to come to a page that looks like this one. In order to upload through the bulk registration system, a College Board username and password must be created. So if your designee doesn't already have an account, they can create a new account right here by clicking Sign Up. Before they do that, however, they're going to want to click the Getting Started button. What this is going to do is share not only the templates and the specifications, but it's also going to provide a number of help items so that they can prepare and understand the information that will need to be submitted. So you can come, anyone can come to this page and have access to the Getting Started information without logging into the system. So this is open to anybody to come and get. So in here there's going to be sample files, and we'll look at what that file looks like, as well as a file specification. That's going to say what are the data elements I need to submit and what are the formats for those data elements. So let's look at what I mean. So the file itself, there's a template, and it's an Excel template that will be downloaded. And what we are asking, whether this is the school level person or the district person, is to identify all of the students that will be testing for the SAT in the April administration. And then they are going to need to complete the required data elements to submit into the system. And those required elements are the College Board AI code. This is going to tell us what school that student is going to be testing at. There's going to be an indicator to say yes, that this is the SAT test administration. The reason for that indicator is because this file is used across all of the different assessments, both SAT and PSAT, and so this just tells us it's SAT. You're going to provide the student's last name, first name, middle initial is an option in the file, but not required. You're going to provide their sex, whether they're male or female, their date of birth, their grade level, their mailing address, as well as their student ID number. The number that you should provide here is their state student ID number, and you are going to provide the number 1, which indicates that that is the state level identifier for the student. So these are the only fields that are required in that file. When you look at the template, there's going to be a number of other fields that are listed in there. Those are optional and do not need to be completed. This file specification document is going to be a bit more detailed. This is going to indicate how the data should be completed. So for first name, for example, what we will accept is a first name that is up to 20 characters in length. And in addition to alpha characters, we will also accept hyphens, spaces, and apostrophes. So hyphenated names will be accepted. But if for some reason when you were putting in the student's name it had parentheses in there, you're going to get an error message when the file is uploaded. So this file specification document is your friend. It's going to help tell you exactly how we are expecting the information, whether it be a alpha presentation or even a code. So for grade level, this one's pretty easy. For your 11th graders, you're going to insert 11th grade. One thing to note on the bulk registration file specs, there are 2 options. You are going to follow the option 1 version. Option 2 talks about the use of an application called Clever, which is not supported for the Idaho SAT school day. So follow the instructions that you see in the document for option 1. When you're preparing the file, as I mentioned, state student ID is a required element For state IDs, according to the specifications, they can be up to 30 characters in length. And you'll see in the specifications document, it says yes or no. And in Idaho, that is a yes. So you will need to provide the state ID number for that student. And in that field, it is alphanumeric. So we'll take letters, numbers, but there cannot be any spaces. If you do not have access or do not have an SSID for students, Melanie's contact information is here so that you can confirm how to gain access to it. But otherwise, you should have student ID numbers for each of your students. One of the common errors is going to be the date of birth field. So date of birth is a required field, and the requirements for is that it's 8 characters in length, and we are expecting it in a specific format. So we are looking for it to be 8 numbers listed as month, month, day, day, year, 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 year. So if my date of birth was January 11th, I would put in 01 for the month, 11 for the date, and then the 4-digit birth year. If you only provide 7 numbers, we're going to assume that that 8th character is the very first character. So we're going to add a leading 0. So if I was to put in only 1, 1, 1, and the year, the system would automatically add a leading 0. So let's take a look at what the upload process looks like. So as I mentioned, everybody is going to be receiving an access code. And those are the bulk registration coordinators that were identified in the intake survey. In that email, you are going to not only get the access code, but we are going to tell you what schools you were identified for doing the upload, so that you'll know, particularly if you're in a multi-school district, you will be able to know exactly which schools you should be including in the upload. And your bulk registration coordinator will need to have a College Board professional account in order to access the tool. So you can do that simply by going to the website and creating one. If you already have one, you do not need to create a new one. So when you log into your College Board account, you are going to see the dashboard. And so you want to check that dashboard and see if you have a listing under your tools that says bulk registration and pre-ID tool. In most cases, you are not going to have access to it. So if you don't see it, you are going to click and expand the K-12 section. If you see it listed here, you're going to click that link, and that will take you into the bulk registration tool. So we're going to go down the path that I don't see it here, so I'm going to click K-12. And what that's going to do is give me a list of College Board applications. And so you're going to want to find the bulk registration and pre-ID label tool and click Get Access. When you do that, you're going to be taken to a screen that asks you to provide your zip code. It is then going to ask you to put in your professional organization. That organization is going to be listed in the email that you receive, so you'll know exactly what organization we're looking for. And then you are going to enter the access code. It's going to be a 6-digit, 6-letter access code. You're going to enter that access code and click Add. What that will do is now link that system to your account. When you go back to your dashboard, under Tools, you'll be able to now see bulk registration as one of the options. So from the dashboard, you're going to click on that, and it will take you into the bulk registration tool. This is the main page for the bulk registration tool. There are a couple of things on here that I'll call out. The first is that there's a help button. And so this help will provide additional information about how to work with the tool. The getting started is that same information that we looked at the beginning of the presentation. That's where you're going to be able to see the template as well as the specifications. Finally, there's also a calendar. This is where I mentioned the dates on this calendar may be different than the February 2nd date that we have shared. So you can ignore the calendar section. To start your new request, you're going to click Create New Request. When you create a new request, what you will do is come into the request screen, and you are going to see, in this case it says PSAT, but what you will see is SAT Spring 2018 registration. It'll say April registration. And this is the date, or I'm sorry, this is going to be the area where you're going to check the box because you're going to say, I'm uploading data for the SAT Spring Administration. And then you are going to come down to the Browse button, browse for that file template that you created, and attach it, and click Submit. Once the file has been uploaded, you're going to be taken to a status screen. On that status screen, you're going to see a check mark for upload because we've gotten the file, and then the file is going to go through a series of validations. How long this validation process takes will vary depending on how many students are in your file. Typically, on the high end, it's going to take maybe an hour, and that's if you have a lot of students. So it should come back relatively quickly. So while it's working on your file, you're going to see a status of pending validation. When it's complete, it's going to change status for you. And so now what you are going to see is potentially an area that says fix errors or warnings. So when we go through that validation, we are reviewing your file, and I should say the system because a person isn't doing it, but the system is reviewing your file to make sure that all of the data elements match the specification. So if you put in an incorrect format for the birth date, for example, you are going to get a validation error, and you're going to get a message that says validation failed. That doesn't mean you have to start all over. It just means that you are going to need to make fixes, and you're going to have two options for how you do that. You can use the system to make fixes in line, so maybe you only have a couple of validations that failed, and so you can go into fixing those specific errors, or if you want to upload a completely new file so that you're maintaining your data in that spreadsheet you developed, you have the option to upload a full replacement file. So if you get the validation failed message, what you're going to do is choose View Request Details. This is going to tell you what went wrong. In the case that you get validation passes, what's going to happen is the green bar is going to go all the way to the Submit Request stage. There are no errors to fix. There are no additional validations of changes. So your green bar here is going to go to Submit Request. But let's look at fixing errors. So you are going to get a couple of different types of notifications. We have something called an error, and that is going to be an item that will not let you submit the file completely. that is because there's a data validation problem or there's missing information in the file. And then there are also things called warnings. Those warnings are going to be things that maybe look a little odd, but we don't require you to fix them. An example of a warning is maybe you have a student whose birth year makes it look like they are older or significantly younger than 11th grade. That's going to give you a warning, because that's a possible scenario, right? Not every 11th grader is the same age and was born in the same couple of years. We give that as a warning. So it gives you an opportunity, if you'd like, to take a look at those, make sure you didn't have a data entry error, and you can fix those before submitting them. So the first way to fix items that we're going to look at is fixing them using the tool itself. So I'm going to click on Fix Errors and Warnings. So in this example, when I look at that, I am seeing that my validation fails. I have 28 errors in my file, and I have 22 warnings. So in order to submit my file, I have to fix all 28 of these errors. And so what you can do is when you look at the system, there's a drop-down box here that lets you select an error type. So in this case, I've chosen AI code not linked to organization. What that's going to do is bring up a subset of my file. And so I have 13 records that failed because the AI code is not linked to the organization. So what does that mean? That basically means that the school, the AI code that you've associated to a student, is not recognized by College Board in the bulk registration tool. That could be for a couple of reasons. It could be that the AI code is incorrect. You know, you've got a mistyped number. It could be because for some reason that AI code isn't associated, let's say you're doing this upload as a district, it could be because that AI code is not associated in the College Board world to that district. There could be a couple of reasons for that. So what you are able to do is in this tool, so let's say I just mistyped my AI code and I have 7.2 reversed. I can correct all 13 of those records at the same time. What I can do is use the AI code, click on that field or on that column, and it's going to update or add a box at the top so that I can submit the new number. So I would simply type in 053727, for example, and I would hit return, and that would allow me to change all 13 of these records at the same time. With that, I can then come back up here and go to the next error, or click the button here to hit the next error. One of the things that you want to make sure that you do once you make a change like that, before you move on, you want to do Save Changes. So if I click on Next Error, it'll take me automatically there, and I can work through those fixes as well. Once I fix the error, so for example, I changed all of those AI codes, it is going to go back through a validation process. And what it's going to do is revalidate the file, and that number of 28 should come down to 15 because I solved 13 of those errors. So you can do this fix and revalidation process as many times as you need to until you get to what we call a clear file. One of the things that will happen, and I'm going to go, let me go back here. for errors that happen, as I said, you can go individually and fix the errors, or you can do a full replacement file. If you choose to do a full replacement file, what you're going to do is go back to your spreadsheet, change those AI codes, and then re-upload the file. You're going to click on Upload the Replacement File, submit the file, and then it will go back through the revalidation process. One of the things that I will tell you is when you are submitting your files, we have, you may have situations, for example, if you have twins. When you have twins, what I recommend that you do is, if you can, include their middle initial, and then make sure you have the correct state ID associated to both of those students so that those twins will come through the system properly, especially if they have a similar first name and obviously they have the same last name and same birthday. The file will accept your 11th graders, which are the students that are required to test. And if you happen to also have 12th graders that have been approved by the state, you can submit those through this file as well. And so both will be recognized as a part of that process. If your students are not pre-ID'd, what will happen is any of your students that come in after that February date, you are going to simply have the students test on the test day using the overage of materials that College Board provides. So you're going to get a material overage based on the number of students you register, so you'll have extra material. So even if you have new students that come in after this February 2nd deadline, they will be able to test as well. So this is just what it looks like to attach the replacement file. It looks similar to what you did the first time around. Again, you're going to follow the option 1 submission process when submitting these files. So then the next step is you've fixed all the warnings. So your changes, validate changes have been turned green. You've got the submit request here as green, so that means everything is good. And you can see the status up here is validation successful. The one thing I will tell you is College Board has not yet gotten that complete file for processing. If you notice, the done arrow is not showing here. So what you need to do is click the submit request button. When you do that, the entire green line will show so that you know everything is done. The other thing that you will see is that the status has now changed to in fulfillment. That's the status that you're looking for. That means that College Board has gotten the successful upload of your complete file after all of the fixes have been done. And so once that happens, bulk registration coordinators will get an email confirmation that just lets you know that, but you'll also see it on the screen. And so the big thing is you want to make sure that done is green, because if it isn't, you're not done yet. So let's take a look at the resources. So we do have a number of tools. I showed you the help button on the beginning of the screen, and that will allow you access to a couple of tutorials. You will also be able to watch a webinar similar to this one that takes you through using the tools. The one that is really helpful from a tutorial standpoint is if you run into errors, to take a look at the fixing errors and warnings, because that will give you some hints on how to solve for those things. A couple of items just to restate. So students who are eligible to test but are not included in the bulk upload, so you have a student who transfers to your school in March, and so they weren't in the bulk upload process. They still will be able to test based on the students that you upload in the bulk registration process. College Board's going to provide about a 10% overage of materials. And so you will have those materials that that student can use on test day. And what's nice this year is that for those students, they're simply going to fill out the answer sheet. On their answer sheet, they're going to give their name and information for themselves. And then when we receive that answer sheet after testing, we will use that to register and score the student's answer sheet. So there's no paper registration form any longer. The other thing that we've called out here is that you may want to conduct a pre-test administration session. So if you have a large enough group that are going to need to complete the answer sheet for their registration, then it may make sense to group those students together and have them complete the information on the answer sheet a little bit earlier. That will allow for the kind of speed up or simplify the test day activities. You can do that as a part of your overall pre-administration session, or you can kind of pull that group and do them specifically. The next slide here is I've got a number of contact information for you, and I think many of you already know most, if not all, of these folks. If you have questions as you are going through the bulk registration process, then what I would recommend that you do is reach out directly to our Idaho field team. You can contact our bulk registration support, but Eddie and Steve will be able to assist you with any Idaho-specific questions. So if you have problems uploading, let us know through the Idaho support or contact Eddie or Steve directly, and we will help work through those questions and any issues that you have. With the deadline being February 2nd, what I do recommend is next week or the week after, at least start the process. The sooner you get through the process, you can kind of step away and forget about it, but start the process as early as it's able to be done. Because of the hard deadline of February 2nd, want to make sure that you don't get to kind of the last couple of days and then you're in a crunch to figure out and solve any potential formatting fixes that need to be done. So as it's feasible, start early. And our team is ready to assist in kind of any of those questions or things you might bump up against when you are uploading it. I know for many of you, you've done this process in the past, and it is no different. It has not changed. For many of you who last year may have done voucher registration, so this will be the first time that you've tried this process. It's a little bit different, but overall, I think you will find it's easier. You're going to get a cleaner set of data because you, as the district or the school, are providing the student information. So we know those students are in the right grade. We know those students' name and student ID numbers are correct. That will really assist when you start looking at the data afterwards when reporting is shared back. So with that, I will take a look at some of the questions that have come in, and if you haven't entered a question and you have one, please feel free to type those in, and I will do my best to answer those as well. So let's start at the beginning. So the first question is, I believe that the person who is listed as our bulk registration designee has retired. How do we change that person? So that's a great question. For you specifically, I will circle back and capture the new person that should be the bulk registration coordinator. However, in the case the person that receives this email does have the ability to forward it and share it with, say, a new person who may be designated. The access code will work for other district or school personnel. So that email, once it's received, if that person is no longer doing it or potentially is not going to do it this year and someone else has now been designated, they can simply share that information, the email that they get, with that person, and that will allow them into the system. The next question is about the AI code, and that question is, will that be in the email that we send? And I will double check to see if it is included in that email. I actually can't remember at the moment. However, if you have any questions to what your AI code is, the supervisor should have received an email in late December with that information, but you can reach out to the Idaho SD support email and we can provide your AI code for you. So then the next question is, if we need to add students before the deadline, do we also use this bulk registration site without redoing the whole template? So when using the bulk registration tool, once you click the submit button and you get to, and I'm just going to back up here, once you get to the point that you've clicked submit and the status has changed to in fulfillment, you will not be able to add students to your file. And so if you do have kind of a fluctuation over, a large fluctuation of students over the next couple of weeks, what you may want to do is get the file ready, upload the file to make sure that it passes the validations, and then as you get closer to the end date, if you have any new students, you can add those students to your file and re-upload your full file. Because you know everything has cleared validations, if there's any errors, it's only going to be on that new data that you added, and then you can click the submit process. On the other hand, if you have prepared your data, you've submitted your data, if we're talking about kind of onesie, twosie students that have now come to your school and you have already submitted the bulk registration file, you don't have to do anything further. So when you submit your bulk registration file, you are going to get about a 10% overage of test books and answer sheets. So if you have one student that came afterwards, you'll have enough materials so that student can test, and when they test, they'll simply fill out their answer sheet. You won't have a label for them. The next question is, if we have students graduating a year early, what do we do? Can we register them as a sophomore? So if you have students that are graduating a year early, so SAT is being, students that are eligible to take the SAT are 11th graders. And so any student who is an 11th grader, or considered 11th grader, can take the SAT. If you have a student that falls outside of that, you would need to speak with Melanie or Danielle at SDE about that student's particular situation. The state would then need to provide instructions and approval for testing a student who is not an 11th grader. If you are asking because your 11th grader is graduating early, so their birth date may be different, as long as they are identified as an 11th grader, that's not a problem. You may get a warning for that student because their birth date looks like it may not be an 11th grader, but you will still be able to register them. But I think the important thing there is 11th graders are the students who are eligible to test. And so if you have a situation that is for a student that is not currently considered an 11th grader, you need to speak with SCE on that. The next question is the AI code the same as our school ID number? So the AI code is the College Board term, but yes, that is going to be your College Board school code. So if you did PSAT testing in the fall, you had a 6-digit AI code that you used on your paperwork. It is going to be the same AI code that you use for SAT. The next question is related to actually score sends. And it is asking, how will students submit their choice of colleges for their scores? So this year, because students do not need to go online, if you used voucher last year, your students completed that score send process online when they were registering. This year, those students will complete their score sends, and actually all students will complete their score sends on their answer sheet. So if you remember from the implementation training, we recommend a pre-administration session to happen before test day. And the activities in that session are to allow students to pre-fill in some of the information on their answer sheet. It's also to participate or provide the universities or scholarships that they wish to send their scores to. And then the third part of it was completing the optional questionnaire if they wanted to do that. And so those activities will now all get captured on the answer sheet, and they will get processed when the answer sheets are returned for scoring. The next question is about the materials. So in going through the bulk registration process, the question is, will the answer sheets now come with a student's name on them? And so once you complete the bulk registration process, in mid-March, you are going to receive your pre-administration materials. And in that shipment, you are going to get blank answer sheets. You are going to get all of your testing manuals, as well as student answer sheet instructions. These are something new this year that get distributed to students, and you are, the students will use them. It has things like the college codes on them, so when the students are completing their answer sheets, they have the information that they need. And the fourth thing that'll be in the first shipment are the student guides, and those are the guides that talk about what SAT is, how it's scored, etc. At the same time, but in a separate box, you are going to receive pre-ID labels. And so as part of that pre-administration session, you're going to want to attach the student's label to the answer sheet and then distribute that answer sheet to the student. So the answer sheets themselves will not be pre-filled in, but you will have a label to place on the answer sheet. Okay, so then the next question is, when can we expect testing materials to arrive? So there's going to be 3 shipments that you are going to be receiving. In late February, you are going to receive the supervisor planning kits. And so think of these as your training kits. The supervisor is going to get a set of manuals so you can start reviewing those and planning your test administration. At the same time, you will get access into the test day administration training. So that's late February. In mid-March, you are going to receive your pre-administration materials. Those materials will be your labels, your answer sheets, as well as all of your testing manuals. So at that point in time, you'll get all of your manuals. The reason for that is so that you can plan those pre-administration sessions. The scripting for them are in the manuals, so you can distribute manuals to your staff for those pre-administration sessions. And then the week prior to test day, you will receive your test materials. And in that shipment, you are going to receive test books as well as the materials to return test books and answer sheets back to College Board. And then there will be a little bit of extra answer sheets in case you need them for test day. And there's an additional supervisor's manual that we provide in there just in case someone did not come back with their manuals. So those are the 3 shipments. You'll get one in February, you'll get the pre-admin in March, and then you'll get test materials in April. So the next question is a question at a district level. So large district with high mobility. Subsequently, we have always pushed the bulk upload later in the window. Why the need for the February 2nd deadline? So in your particular district, as I said, I would still want to have you kind of start early just to get all the information pulled together. But if you have high mobility, then I would definitely suggest that you load the file closer to the deadline so that you get as accurate a picture as possible. One of the reasons for the February deadline this year is because of the creation of that pre-administration activity. So last year, the bulk registration file needed to be submitted in a time frame that allowed us to get test materials to schools. This year, we've backed up some of the delivery of test materials. So instead of getting all of your shipment and all of your information the week or so before testing, so late March, early April, we are providing those labels as well as answer sheets to allow you to do some activities before test day to try and lighten the load on test day. And so because of that, we have to be able to know what students are going to be in the sessions and get that information so that we can ship the materials to arrive in that March timeframe. So that's part of the reason why that deadline has come earlier in the year instead of later. The other reason is also just the benefit of using the labels, so that ability for you to get a little bit cleaner set of materials. Again, in order to do that, we have incorporated the optional questionnaire and score sends into an activity that now happens in March instead of in April. Next question is related to the template. And it says, the question is, if we are not completing some of the columns, so the non-required columns, do we leave it blank or do we delete the column? That's a great question. You are actually going to leave it blank. If you take that template and remove any columns from it, your file is going to fail validations because we cannot read the file. What the system is expecting, and I will back up to that sample file. What the system is going to be expecting is the entire set of fields in that file. So I've only got 10 or 12 fields showing here, but as you can tell, there are about 34 columns that are in that spreadsheet. You need to upload that spreadsheet with all 34 of those columns as they are listed, and for any headers, not to change the headers. So it should be exactly the template that you download that you're uploading into the system. The next question, let's see. Just trying to make sure I caught them all. It looks like I have answered all of the major questions. There are a couple of questions that have come in that are school specific. So if I didn't answer your question for everybody, I will, myself or Eddie Pulaski will follow up directly with you and make sure that we answer your specific question. And I'm just going to go forward to the end of the presentation so that you can see the contact information again. There we go. And I'll give it another minute and see if there's any last questions. Oh, one more question. There's a question to clarify that schools will not need to order materials. The bulk upload will submit orders for College Board, and that is correct. So unlike what you may have done in the fall for PSAT and MSQT, for SAT, College Board is going to create your material orders for each of your schools based on two things. The first is the bulk registration file. So for all the students that you upload, we are going to know that those are the kids that are testing at your school. The second thing that we will use are the accommodations requests that have been submitted in SSD Online. That will identify for us which students are testing with accommodations and what format test materials should be sent. So there is no need to order any kind of materials. We will determine your material count based on your bulk registration and your SSD Online requests. When you receive your materials, what we do ask, similar to last year, is that you take a look at your materials once you get them, make sure that you have received the materials that you were expecting, and if not, that you contact us immediately so that we can ship additional materials. If for some reason you have a significant influx of students, say transfer students, and for some reason they are not able to test on the primary date, you still will have the opportunity to test them as a part of the makeup date. And so you can, through the makeup request process, submit counts for materials for those students, and they would test on the April 24th date. All right, I think we've gotten through all the questions, and what I will do is, as I said, for the couple of school-specific questions, we'll follow up directly with you, and we will make available the presentation to everybody, and then each of you that are designated bulk registration coordinators will receive an email in just a little bit with all of your logon information. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to one of the contacts that you see on the screen. And I thank you, everybody, for joining us, and I hope you have a good rest of the afternoon.